are joined today by
J.R. Romano.
Hello, everybody. J.R. Romano here, chairman of the Connecticut Republican Party. Well, it is our first podcast post-municipal elections. But before we kind of get into what happened, I want to touch a little bit on this whole impeachment thing. You know, we tend to spend a lot of time talking about Connecticut locally, what's happening. But I watched some of the testimony last night. And it is absolutely, I don't even know the words to describe, but when you listen to a member of Congress in a country that believes in all of these guiding principles of justice and due process, when a congressman on national television says that hearsay is better than direct evidence, and I'm paraphrasing a little bit, but basically the gist, we can play the clip.
Hearsay can be much better evidence than direct. Hearsay can be much better evidence than direct.
You have to shake your head because this whole thing has been trying to overturn the results of 2016. The Democrats literally, since President Trump was elected, the very next day, they're talking about impeachment because they cannot accept any other approach or strategy or vision or opinion for that matter. And we see this, we're starting to see this play out in our everyday lives, right? You come across someone who's a Democrat, and if you have a difference of opinion, whether it be education, whether it be immigration, whether it immediately boils down to you're a sexist, you're a fascist, you're a racist. And this is the culture that the Democrat Party has created. It's almost like it's a religion now. It's like they're all religious zealots, I think. And I've been doing this about 20 years in politics, and I can remember where we had a lot of debates centered around civil unions and gay marriage and a lot of the conversation. And the Democratic Party has turned into this party of constantly offended. Like, I want to go back to like the 1950s when someone would say something or do something, and if they were someone who was devoutly religious, it's like, oh my God, I can't believe they just did that. How dare you? How dare you? That is so morally wrong. And they stand in judgment of other people. And you saw this play out in Congress. They will stop at nothing to try to overturn the results of the 2016 election. And frankly, I think what they recognize is they're going to have a tough time beating President Trump in reelect simply because their cast of candidates is not, they are, I mean, I don't even have to tell you if anyone out there has watched those debates that the Democrats have had, it's bad. It is bad. But I think the saddest part about this whole impeachment inquiry, whatever you want to call it, and it's a complete sham. The star witnesses had heard something from someone else. I can't even follow it. But the thing that's getting ignored and underreported is this USMCA. And what that basically is the trade deal between Canada, Mexico, and the United States. Now, why this matters, and I am specifically calling out our congressman here in the state of Connecticut, and I'll get to why. But Jim Himes, Johanna Hayes, and Joe Courtney specifically, because of the regions that they represent and the industries that they represent, for sitting on their hands while a deal, this USMCA, could create about $68.2 billion in GDP, and 176,000 jobs would be created simply by passing this trade deal. And they won't do it. They won't even take it up. Now, why do you think that is? I'm going to ask directly to Jim Himes, Johanna Hayes, and Joe Courtney, why are you sitting on your hands when it could mean Americans get a job? Why are you sitting on your hands when it means the GDP growth of this country could grow? Could it be that you actually don't want success for this country? Could it be that you don't want Americans to have jobs? You'd actually prefer and are rooting for a recession. In fact, you're trying to make sure that it happens. And why I mean that, let's take the state of Connecticut, for example, because I pulled up some fact sheets. $2.9 billion are exported to Canada and Mexico in 2018. Now, what this deal does is it actually kind of loosens up some restrictions. There's some unfair practices in Canada when it comes to some farming industries, which, guess what, guys? We have farms in eastern Connecticut. We have farms in Litchfield County. We know for a fact, $2.9 billion of exports go into Canada and Mexico from the state of Connecticut. And these congressmen are sitting on their hands, which means the people, particularly in eastern Connecticut, who are struggling, could benefit from this deal. But no. The Democrats don't care about your family. And I say this all the time. They're more interested in impeachment inquiry a year away from a general election. This deal could help people who are struggling in a state whose economy is struggling. It is a no-brainer, but yet Democrats will not call it for a vote. And that is one of the greatest tragedies that is currently playing out in Washington, D.C. right now. Not this impeachment stuff. Is the fact that Democrats are more interested in making sure the economy slows, Americans don't have jobs, and that we're focused on everything else but the actual strength of our nation and the fact that Donald Trump's policies are making Americans' lives better. I'm sorry, Democrats, you're going to have to come up with a better reason to win an election besides hearsay. And I know, according to some Democrats, it's enough to convict you in the court of law.
Hearsay can be much better evidence than direct. Hearsay can be much better evidence than direct.
Oh my God, I can't even. I gotta stop. Let's move on to something a little bit more positive. Our local election cycle. Republicans did very well. I think specifically a lot has been made of Sprague, but first I just want to highlight the fact that we fought off major challenges in Greenwich. We picked up Fairfield, which are two very large communities that we paid very close attention to. In Danbury and New Britain, of course, everyone, these are big cities. The Democrats should have them. Mark Boughton's going to lose. Well, guess what? Mark Boughton didn't lose. Congratulations, Mark, because I know they were coming for you. But I want to move on to Sprague. Kathy Austin. Now, I know I've heard through the grapevine that Kathy is not a fan of the podcast. I'm not surprised. But it goes to show the power of having a message and communicating that message well, because we've been telling the story of Kathy Austin. And what I want to do, and it was interesting because I talked to two different reporters about what I believed happened in Sprague. Now, I think it's an oversimplification to say that it was simply because of tolls. I think this has been a long time brewing for Kathy Austin in Sprague. Tolls certainly was a factor, particularly her testimony where, we all, I'm going to play it because we all love it. What did we do, Kathy?
We have stopped money from going into the Special Transportation Fund. We diverted some money from going into that, which is different. That's different.
I think the power of social media has allowed us to tell a story that Kathy Austin didn't want to be told. Because what's happened, and it's happened for a long time, and a lot of Democrat senators and state reps do this. They tell their constituents that they're fighting for the middle class, and they tell their constituents that they're for, the working class, and they're there fighting, and they're going to fight to keep taxes low. But then they go to Hartford, where they think nobody's watching, and they vote an entirely different way. So what we were able to do with the work of, obviously, the good people out in Sprague, little shout-out to Mike Meadows, the town chairman down there. They had a great candidate, by the way, running against Kathy, someone that had served the community for a long time. But what we were able to do is we were able to show Kathy's town of Sprague that, and we forced the two worlds to meet. And I don't think Kathy appreciated that. No, I know she didn't. But what we basically were able to do was show that Kathy not only voted to raise taxes, I think it's definitely three times, twice under Malloy and then with Lamont. So she's voted to raise taxes three times. But more than that, and even bigger than that, is Kathy has a seat at the table. She is the chairman of appropriations. She is in the room when they're talking about budget. She is in the room. So the people of Sprague and her district, you need to understand she is there setting the policy. She's having direct input on what's being discussed. She's not some wallflower that sits in the back and when they caucus, everyone says, okay, Kathy, we need you to vote this way. No. She is there negotiating. And to Kathy, her special interests were more important than the people in her district because you could see in her voting record. Eastern Connecticut is not like Fairfield County. It's not an ultra-wealthy area of the state. I mean, I grew up in Derby, Connecticut, and I'm proud of that fact. But I know it's a community that's a working-class community, average annual salary around $40,000 a year, give or take. Sprague's very similar to that. So when you have Kathy voting for tax increase after tax increase and then going back to her district and telling her how much she's fighting for the working class, it's utterly ludicrous. And so social media and us telling the narrative and telling the truth finally caught up with the senator. And I think it was a rude awakening for a lot in the building, which is why we're going to move on to our next topic, which is tolls. They're back. Well, they're not really back. Governor would like them to be back, but this municipal cycle certainly has shook, and it's a good word, shook the Democrats at their core. And I think they recognize now that in an election year, they're never going to give the governor tolls. And I think the hardest thing that the Democrats cannot wrap their head around is that as a resident of Connecticut, we're just strapped. And I know Len Fasano recently just proposed his plan, which is dipping into the rainy day fund, and it's so that we don't have to continue to go back to the taxpayers and demanding more of them. I think it was like 14 toll gantries was the latest one. I don't think it's going to happen. I've been saying that for a while. I knew there are a lot of Democrats on the fence. And in particular, I think there are Democrats who the governor felt may have been strong votes for tolls, but after the municipal cycle where they looked into some of their local communities and what happened, I don't think it's going to happen. But I must warn you that the Democrats have yet, and I mean at all, talked about cutting anything. So even in the governor's proposal, it wasn't about cutting anything. It was, okay, we're gonna do this toll program so we can borrow money from the federal government at a lower rate. I mean, it's unbelievable. They have no interest in actually cutting or streamlining government. It's always about revenue. And which is why if you look at Len Fasano's plan, it is much more suited for where we are economically, where the state is in terms of fiscal crisis, on how we manage our way out of this. So for those out there, stay strong. We as a party are going to be doing consistent phone banking nights throughout the rest of the year, calling on topics like tolls, like the grocery tax. We're going to be targeting, because I think we have a major opportunity to win back some of the seats we lost in 2018. And we can only do that by outworking the Democratic Party. And I think we have them on the ropes. Now we got to take it from them. So this is J.R. Romano, Connecticut Republican Party. Thanks for tuning in.